Hey, hello everyone. I'm Bree Kimberly. I am a nurse here at North Kansas City Hospital in Community Health and Wellness. We've got a interesting presentation today, and I'm wondering if you're joining us because maybe you sit at a desk. I'm currently at my desk. Hannah's at a desk. So you might be joining us because you're wondering about desk ergonomics. So let me tell you a little about Dr. Hannah Jo Stallard. She is a physical therapist here at North Kansas City Hospital. She works at the Creekwood Outpatient Therapy Clinic. She specializes in treating injuries, post-surgical recovery, chronic pain, pelvic floor dysfunction, that's a pretty popular topic right now, and injury prevention. Dr. Stallard earned her degree from Maryville University in St. Louis. Her doctoral research investigated patterns in post-acute recovery after stem cell transplants and how physical therapy can positively influence functional outcomes. Outside of her professional life, Hannah Jo enjoys playing pickleball, walking her dog Bear, who's a Bernedoodle, Bernese Mountain Dog and Poodle, and gardening. Today, she's going to share her expertise on desk ergonomics and provide us with some valuable tips, how to improve our daily function, our setting on our booties in front of a screen, making us feel better. So the Q&A is open, the chat is open. We're going to field those comments to Hannah Jo at the end. So if you think of something, pop it in there, and then we'll get it at the end. And you guys help me welcome Dr. Hannah Jo Stallard. Take it away, friend.
Well, thank you, Bree. Like she said, I'm a physical therapist here at North Kansas City Hospital. So thank you guys for coming to the presentation on desk ergonomics. So first, we'll just start off. There it goes. First, we'll just start off with the question, what is ergonomics? Kind of work through the posture, working from the ground up, go through some activities that you can try to incorporate in your day-to-day life. Do just a few stretches, few strengthening stuff, and then, like Bree said, we'll open it up for questions. So, what is ergonomics? According to Merriam-Webster, it's designing and arranging things people use so that the people and things interact most efficiently and safely. So the goal of this presentation is to maximize comfort and minimize strain in order to assist with productivity. From my experience, it's only until after a person has a muscle strain that they recognize how frequently they use that muscle group in their day-to-day lives. This pain is often distracting and aggravating in the workplace, and due to the nature of gravity, our bodies must work constantly to hold ourselves upright, even if we don't recognize the load. Some muscles, like postural muscles, are designed to hold for long periods of time with low loads of duration to help with posture. However, certain positions make it more difficult for those postural muscles and lead to chronic pain and injuries. That is why we're going to talk about it today, because the way we sit and stand at our jobs can help combat long-lasting discomfort. So I prefer to start from the floor and work my way up. So we'll start just so that we can focus on the foundation and work our way up to the head to support it. Starting with lower body posture, and I'll separate sitting and standing for when it's appropriate here, because I know some people like to do both. So when you're sitting, it's important for your thighs to be parallel to the floor, as you can see in this photo here. And his knees are really not bent more than 90 degrees. And so 90 degrees is like that L shape we're talking about there. And then his feet are supported. He's using his desk. They're at an angle, but you can feel free to use a ream of paper or a phone book if you still have one of those, or just a little stool if your feet don't reach the ground. And if they do, perfect, just trying to keep them flat on the ground. Crossing your legs is kind of an important topic to mention because our bodies are made to move and bend and move in different angles. So crossing your legs isn't inherently bad. It's just bad when it becomes a pattern for several hours of your week for multiple weeks of your life. So ideally, your feet are flat and not crossed for long periods of time. When you're standing, your feet are about shoulder width apart there. And what I like about this diagram is that you can see his hips are over his feet. Our bodies are not a straight line. We'll get into that in a second. This diagram does a pretty good job of trying to show the alignment, but obviously our bones don't just work like stick figures. But trying to avoid locking your knees, and then most importantly, wearing shoes that provide proper support. So you can still find business casual shoes with good arch support or just whatever you need. And if you choose to wear shoes that aren't supportive, you could always use a standing mat instead. So like if you wore heels to work one day, you could take those shoes off and kind of stand on a standing mat. They're like these cushion mats. People often use them in kitchens just to support, but I always joke with my patients that it's much easier to replace your shoes or a standing mat that's not supporting you than your joints. It's good to be able to have support because, like I said, it's your foundation for the rest of your body here. Moving on up to the spine, and we'll separate this into sections, but just a quick little anatomy section here. So starting from the bottom, your cervical spine is your neck, and then your thoracic spine is anything with a rib on it. And then your lumbar spine is your low back, and then your sacrum there, sacrum and coccyx, just go between your two hip bones. They're kind of what connect the hips and the spine together there. And so what's important to note about this picture here is that you can see the curve. Our bodies aren't a straight line. So the cervical or the neck and the lumbar, the low back, they are curved the same direction. So the pinpoint is going towards your body, like the curve is going towards the front of your body or your feet, right? When you're sitting. And your thoracic spine and your sacrum are curved the opposite direction. They're going towards the back of your body. And so I'll separate them simply because they move in different directions and they're supported different ways. So most office chairs that are given to people have lumbar support built into them. Your low back is supposed to maintain a slight curve towards the front of your body with your feet flat on the floor. So your chair is most likely a good fit for you if your lower body is supported too, right? Your thighs are parallel, your feet are flat on the ground or supported on a box, right? Some seats might be too deep for your femur or that big thigh bone in your leg. So sometimes, like the picture on the side here, it's helpful to use a lumbar support pillow or a support like she has there, just so that her shoulders can be maintained over her hips there without feeling like she has to slouch or her body has to move into a C shape. They're not necessary, but sometimes they're very helpful. It's something you could just try out and see if it helps. The goal is not to have something that's pushing you too far forward or making you slouch backward. The goal is just to find something in the middle to support that natural curve in your back. You can likely use something you already own. You don't have to go out and buy one unless you want something fancier. But you can use like a small cushion or a pillow. I've even rolled up sheets or towels to help support people. It's really nothing too extreme here. When you're standing though, you won't really have a lumbar support. So it's important to maintain your hips over your feet, right? Not letting them lean on the table when you're typing, so coming closer. And then it's also, like I said, very same thing as crossing your legs. It's not good to be in one hip, like lean on one hip for a long period of time or lean on the other side or pop your hip out. Again, Our bodies are made to move. So those motions aren't inherently bad. It's just that for long periods of time, it can cause muscle asymmetry or just imbalances in strength and more wear and tear on one side than the other. So just trying to be even. Moving along to your mid back or your thoracic spine, right? Trying to avoid those rounded shoulders, which is tough, especially because we just want to be forward, right? That's where gravity is naturally pushing you. Most of the time, we've developed, myself included, have developed habits where our shoulders are forward, whether we're typing or even in bed, like my shoulders just rest forward when I'm laying on my back. Or if you lay on your side, your shoulders resting forward, right? Sleeping is a totally different subject, so we won't get distracted there, but our bodies definitely tend to be rounded to go with the flow of gravity there. And but what's important is that your shoulders are over your hips, right? And so that usually naturally keeps the curves in your back, but like the curves you're supposed to have, like coming forward with your lumbar spine and going back with your thoracic spine. Your back does not have to touch the back of the chair. And the picture here, their back is touching, but sometimes the lumbar support pushes you forward or the seat isn't a good depth for you. So it doesn't have to touch the back of the chair, right? I don't want you seated all the way back and that extending really far back into that position. But just trying to keep your shoulders on top of your hips there. Well, because your arms are attached to your thoracic spine, we'll go there next. So we'll go to upper extremities. But just trying to keep your elbows relaxed, not trying to keep them tight. So what's important to note, because it kind of feels weird to hold your arms up, is you can use your arm rests. So if you look at these diagrams here, the keyboard is lower and the monitor is higher. That's very common in a workplace, but for me, I only have access to a laptop. So there, yeah, it's kind of ironic as a physical therapist that I don't have a monitor, but it is something you need to be aware of trying to keep your elbows bent less than 90 degrees there, trying not to go more than 60, but just relaxing on the armrest, typing, right? And if you're standing, right, you can keep your elbows relaxed and just rest the edge of your wrist there. Not applying too much pressure because I don't want your fingers to get tingly or, enhance pressure on your wrists because that can lead to carpal tunnel. So that's why I typically don't recommend one of those wrist resting guides. And then unlike the photo is a bad example. Don't have a keyboard that tilts upward like that. Try to keep your keyboard flat and your wrist as neutral as possible. So try not to bend too much forward or too much backward. And now we'll go to the cervical spine or the neck, right? I feel like this is kind of one of the heaviest hitters of desk ergonomics. Starting with the foundation and working your way up. So your neck can be supported, but the neck and upper back are typically the biggest areas of pain that I frequently see from the workplace. So trying to keep your ears aligned over your shoulders. So shoulders over hips, ears over shoulders. You can see that in the bottom right photo with the 12-pound thing. I'll get to that photo, but that's a nice alignment. And so again, our bodies aren't straight lines. So it's not like you have to sit as tall as you can, as like thinking of being in the military, standing as straight as you can. It's not going to be like that all the time, right? It's going to be comfortable on things you're going to be able to, a position you're going to be able to hold for several hours. But the monitor is nice because you can usually keep it at eye level and keep your head in a neutral position, right? With the laptop, you're going to have to turn your chin just slightly downward. So my ears are still over my shoulders, but I have to just tilt my chin down a little bit. That way I can try to avoid strain. This one I've been guilty of too, is just trying to keep your eye prescription updated. Same with your hearing as well, if you need it with your computer, but it's really easy to lean forward and be like, wait, what does that say? Right? And then you stay in that position. And again, leaning forward is not inherently bad. It's just bad when you do it for a long time. As we can see in that bottom right photo, it has weights at the top there. So the 12-pound, they say the average human head weighs about 10 to 12 pounds, which I know is kind of a funny statistic there. But the more you move your head away from your center of gravity, the back of your neck muscles, they have to work a lot harder. So as you can see, the further you go forward, the more that weight increases. So I believe from 12 pounds is just straight above. And then 2 inches forward is 32 pounds. So it automatically doubles like 2.5 times just from 2 inches forward. So it really doesn't take much. And then I believe the 42 is from 3 inches for deviated forward. So it's something to note because you're making those muscles work super hard, and then they can get tight and lead to headaches or jaw pain. So trying to avoid that if you can. The top right photo is something we call upper cross syndrome. So it's when the shoulders are rounded, the head is forward, right? So when that's happening, it makes an X. That's why we call it a cross, right? So the top of your neck, those tight upper trapezius and levator scapulae, those are just muscles, and these are just names of muscles. But the back of your neck and your pectoralis muscles, which are in the front of your chest, or your pecs, right? Those muscles get really tight from being in that position. And so that can lead to, like I said, just shoulder issues or impingement, headaches in your neck. So good thing about muscles is we can stretch them, right? They're adaptable. It takes several repetitions in time, but again, just trying to prevent injuries where we can. And then, so we have those tight muscles. Then the front of your neck and the lower, or I guess mid-back muscles there, mid-back and the front of your neck, those muscles aren't fully working. They're getting too lengthened, and they're not strong enough to support you the longer you hold that position. So if you were just to hold that position for a minute, you wouldn't see any changes. It's when you do this for months or years that those muscles get weaker. And then if you are on the phone frequently, ideally you have a headset, but try to avoid cradling the phone between your shoulder and your ear, because that can cause some muscle tension as well, especially if you're on the phone with insurance for long periods of time and on hold. It's better if you do use a handheld phone, just to hold it up with your neck in line. When in doubt, always keep your ears over your shoulders and your shoulders over your hips. So when it comes to activity recommendations, ideally, and I know everyone's job is going to be slightly different, but trying to limit long periods of sitting when possible. So taking breaks at least every hour if you can, whether that's filling up a water bottle or getting coffee or walking to the bathroom, just walking around to get a little extra blood flow, right? Trying to alternate between sitting and standing. So some people have the luxury of a standing desk or a desk that raises, but if you don't have that, that's okay. Just trying to take breaks when you can, as your job permits, or maybe you take a phone call, but you stand up for the phone call, things like that. A very popular phrase in physical therapy is that movement is medicine. And so I did some research to see how we could kind of incorporate this into what everyday desk users would need. And I found this amazing study that talked about it was looking at your blood sugar levels or your glycemic index. So they were comparing walking for 30 minutes, like one time a day after a meal, which whenever you exercise, your blood sugar levels will naturally go down just because your body's using some of that. So they compared a 30-minute walk to doing 10 body weight squats. So just sitting at your desk trying to squat, come back up. So roughly every hour. It said every 45 minutes, but every hour. And the study, the outcome of it was that people who did the squats, 10 bodyweight squats every hour, had better blood sugar regulation than the people who walked for 30 minutes. And I'm not trying to discourage you from walking. If you love walking, good for you, go for it. Go for it. But doing 10 squats every hour, right? There's no weight, no equipment. You can just do it wherever you are. And if you don't want to do it in front of people, you can do it in the bathroom, right? It can help maintain your blood sugar levels, which would not perfectly, but it would help to lower that and manage it. And walking, like I said, walking would be helpful, especially if you only have limited time. Some people only have 30 minutes for lunch, so they can't possibly walk for the 30 minutes and eat and take a phone call or do whatever they need to do in that period, right? So if you can just walk for a fraction of it, that would help too. And then stretching throughout your day. I have a few stretches in here and a few strengthening exercises that aren't all inclusive. They're just a start, but they're better than nothing. So, and then lastly, any type of movement is what matters. And it doesn't have to be in your workday, right? There's so many types of exercise that out there in the world that hopefully you can find one you enjoy. The idea is that you can look forward to something like movement. So it doesn't have to be running, doesn't have to be cycling, doesn't have to be swimming. There's so many classes if you prefer a group mentality or if you want to be on your own. There's so many things you can do just with gym equipment. And if you don't want to have a gym membership, you can do stuff at home. There's so many free resources on YouTube of dancing or strength training or no equipment workouts. There's really a lot out there. But if you have a history of cardiovascular conditions, please consult your primary care provider before trying a new exercise just to see what that would look like. Okay. And then we'll just get into, we'll go back a little bit. I was gonna address walking pads because they're very trendy right now on the internet to have walking pads at desks. I think there's a potential for this as long as you're able to maintain a good posture, right? It's very similar to the standing posture, but you're gonna walk at a slow speed just so that I feel like you aren't reaching too far forward or lifting your shoulders up, right? And making all these neck muscles get tight. I think the only way you really can't do it is if you're walking at a slow pace or if you're on the phone and you don't have to type. And some other health trends, some people like to sit on those yoga balls or Swiss balls. Again, there's usefulness to this, but it does require a little bit more core strength, okay? So if you are going to sit on a ball, don't lean too far forward. That's kind of the most tempting thing to do when you're on it, is just your back becomes really, really arched. And you don't want to do that and get back pain as a result either. So it's important to sit on there, tucking your belly button in towards your spine, right? And being able to hold yourself up in that way. Again, the same principle still applies as sitting, keeping your shoulders over your hips, right? But trying not to lean too far forward. And if you are going to look for a ball, try to keep your hips and your knees at 90 degrees pretty much. That's when you're looking for a size. They usually come in a diameter I think the ball we have here, I think is 83 centimeters, something like that in diameter. And that usually fits generally. But if you order them on Amazon, you can always try them and return them or go to a store if you want something like that to try them on. But just trying to keep your hips and your knees about 90 degrees if you're going to sit on a ball. So that way your feet are flat on the ground. And another important point about changing your posture is that it takes literally thousands of repetitions, right? This is not an overnight task. You're not going to have amazing improvements by Friday, right? Your muscles will get fatigued from trying to hold you upright, especially if they haven't been training for it. Unfortunately, our muscles kind of have if you don't use it, you lose it policy. And we're able to gain that muscle back, right? Always able to train, but it takes about 8 to 12 weeks to see actual muscle changes. So I don't want you to get discouraged of like, man, my shoulders keep coming forward. I'm not holding myself upright. It's totally okay. We're going to get through that, but it just takes so many repetitions. I like to give the example of whenever they're teaching babies, like infants on tummy time, they're having to hold their head up for like an hour a day and to try to build those muscles up. And it just takes time and practice and a lot of commitment to it. So if that just means putting a little Post-it note on the side of your computer to try to maintain your posture, right? That will be helpful. If you're in your car, you can adjust your mirror so that your rear view mirror so that you're sitting all the way upright. So that way it's in a perfect position. So like that gives you a cue, right? It takes several repetitions. So try not to get discouraged. And now we'll move on to some stretches. So I'm only covering about 4 stretches and 4 strengthening exercises. So it's not comprehensive, but it's a good place to start. So this first one is hip flexor stretch, and feel free to join in if you'd like. I won't be looking at you, so feel free to try these on the spot if you'd like. Is a standing hip flexor stretch. So you're just going to stand in a stride. Your feet aren't on a balance beam. They're more on like train tracks. And both toes are pointed straight ahead. It's easy to let the back foot toe kind of go out to the side, but try to straighten it if you can. You're going to lean forward onto that front knee, and you're going to tuck your hips underneath you. So it takes a little bit of coordination here. Feel free to be next to a wall or a desk or something to maintain your balance, just the first time you do it. The goal is to feel a stretch in your front pocket of your standing leg. So in the right and the front of your leg there. The woman demonstrating this would feel it on her right leg or the leg that's behind her in the front. Moving on, we have this doorway stretch. So this can always be modified to doing one side at a time. Oops, excuse me, one side at a time. So if you don't have the mobility for both, or it just feels too tight, you can always just do one side at a time. And you're just slightly leaning into the door. The woman doing this has her feet kind of one foot in front of the other, so you can kind of control how much you're stretching. That way you can control how much weight's going forward. Stretches should never be sharp or painful. They should just be like a pulling sensation. So don't feel like you have to break any records. It's just trying to increase the mobility of the joints. So that one, the doorway stretch, is stretching your pectoralis muscles here in the front. That's the ones that can cause some of that shoulder rounding if they're tight. Next, we have a hamstring stretch. So just sitting on the edge of your chair. One knee is straight, one knee's bent, supporting you there. Your toe can be up for a little added stretch, or your toe can be pointed towards the ground for a little less stretch in your calf, not your hamstring, but your calf. And then you're just going to lean your trunk forward, right, until you find that happy medium spot of a pulling sensation that's not painful. And then, excuse me, well, the next one, again, is just sitting on the edge of your seat, crossing your ankle over your knee, trying to get a stretch in your back pocket as you lean forward. This one's good to stretch the external rotators in your hip, trying to get a little bit more motion. They can get stiff, and hopefully you feel this a little bit in your back as well. The next, and I guess when it comes to stretches, I should say you can hold them roughly 20 to 30 seconds, and you can do 2 on each side. That's typically what I recommend, but ideally you can just be doing these throughout your day. So whenever your muscles get tight, you can do them. So whatever works in your routine is what's going to be most effective, right? Consistency is the best solution here. A few strengthening exercises. So the first one is chin tucks. That's going to be taking your chin and tucking it towards the back of your head. So it's not like she's looking down. Her nose does not rotate down, but the chin is just sliding backwards like you're trying to make a double chin. It's not the most flattering exercise. But the goal is trying to hold this around 10 seconds or so. You're going to feel a little bit of a stretch in the back of your neck, right? Those muscles that get tight when you're leaning all the way forward. So trying to stretch the back of your neck and strengthen the front of your neck, right? Feel free to do this standing with your back against the wall. That way your head can kind of rest on a surface there. But yeah, so this one's combating that upper cross syndrome because we're strengthening the front of your neck and stretching the back of your neck. You also could do this laying down on a flat surface as well. The next one is just shoulder blade squeezes. So your shoulder blades are squeezing together and down, kind of like they're moving towards your back pocket. Okay, so they're just going to squeeze back. Your shoulder blades, hopefully, are no longer rounded. They're squeezing back. And hold just for a few seconds and repeat about 20 of these. This is very similar to a row exercise, if you've ever seen that. So if you have equipment, you could always add that in with your arms. So like rowing back with weights or adding a bent over row. The idea is just trying to target the muscle group. If you'd like something more tailored, of course, feel free to reach out for something that fits your lifestyle a little bit better. The last two we have are just these hamstring curls. So simply just standing upright, trying to pick up your foot and bend your knee, right? This one's going to work the back of your thigh muscles there, those hamstrings, and help you stand upright and tall and help support your back. And then the last one is just heel raises. So lifting your heels off the ground, going up onto your tiptoes and coming back down. Doing about 20 on each side there. So if you or your loved ones have any reason you would like to go to physical therapy, occupational therapy, or speech therapy, please visit us at any of our 3 locations. We have one at the hospital, and then 2 on North Oak at varying levels. I'm at the Creekwood location there. It's kind of right next to the Sam's Club. And then the Oak Park Medical Park is right next to the Gashland Clinic, if you're familiar with that. Since August of 2023, Missourians can go straight to their physical therapist without a referral for up to 10 visits or 30 days, whichever comes first. Typically, our clinics like to reach out to your primary care provider just to communicate and tell them about the therapy there. So we usually end up doing that too. But thank you for staying to the end. I hope you learned something you could apply to your day-to-day life. Feel free to ask questions in the chat with Bree, or you can feel free to email me too.
Thank you, Hannah Jo. Were you guys all like setting up Strider? I was doing the neck exercise here. I think keeping your ears over your shoulders was very like eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yes.
Sometimes it is confusing. Like it's like, oh, keep your head this way or have your neck out like this, but that's a good cue for me at least to
Hmm.
have my ears over my shoulders. I
Yeah.
have a question because I'm 5'1". I
Hmm.
struggle with short people syndrome and like my desk, I know you went feet flat on the floor. I think that was a good idea about having a ream of paper or something underneath there because I would be sitting on the floor in my chair to keep my feet flat. You know what I'm saying? Like my chair would be all the
Yeah.
way
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 5'4" and my coworkers tease me that I need a booster seat. So I totally understand where you're coming from. But
down.
yeah, it's really just trying to keep your thighs parallel. That's what's most important. So if that means you lower your seat, or if your desk can't change positions, you keep your seat in the same spot and then your feet are supported in some way, whether that's a stool or paper or books or whatever
And
that looks like.
depending on where you work, I remember when I worked on the floor as a nurse, I didn't have like a one space I was in all the time. I just,
Yeah.
would work around and then I'd come back to a chair. So I think trying to be mindful if you're sharing a workspace with people to adjust that to your
Hmm.
body habitus, right? Like how
Yeah.
everyone's built the same. So I think it's easy for us to get busy and just jump in and like just succumb to what the chair is, but to be mindful of that posture.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes I understand what you're saying because whenever I'm on the hospital side of things, I definitely have to just find a chair and camp out somewhere sometimes. And so usually if the chair is not a good fit for you, you can just kind of sit towards the front of it to get your feet flat. And that's where hopefully you could have some type of lumbar support. But if not, you just be sitting on the edge of the seat, pretending it's a stool instead of regular chair type. It's not ideal, but it's something.
You also mentioned the keyboard being flat.
Hmm.
I mean, it's got a fancy lever on the back. Why would I not want to flip it up, right?
I
But
know, and that's what they tell you to do, but
that
I
makes
it
sense.
that yeah. Ideally your wrist is straight and not flipped up because it
Okay.
can cause some tension in the back of your wrist over time too.
I changed mine. Did you guys change yours? Just go ahead and do it right now. Hannah Jo says, make your keyboard flat. All right. And then keeping my glasses up to date because I am so guilty of squinting, and leaning forward or not putting the readers on. And that really, every time, just like you said, it takes a long time to correct that posture. It takes a minute to create that posture too, that bad posture. So
Hmm.
those little things of being proactive can, like you were saying, can really make a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I am guilty of that too.
Mhm.
That's why I put it on here because I need the reminder myself.
Right. Well, thank you, Hannah Jo. Does anybody have any other questions? Please feel free to throw them in that chat or that Q&A. If you registered for this class, we're going to be sending you a follow-up email and a link with Hannah's PowerPoint and a link to our YouTube channel. So if you haven't been to our YouTube channel, please go do that. There's a lot of content out there, whether it's on physical therapy, nutrition, mental health. Go check it out. We have a pretty good library there. Also, Hannah, go back one slide so we can see that locations and that QR code. If you're thinking about physical therapy and just getting an assessment done, I love me a physical therapist, occupational therapist. I learned so much from you guys. You're so smart, anatomy so well. And I feel like you guys just really give the time that is needed to listen to a patient and find out what's really going on in their day to day. So I heart you guys. So go check them out. Yeah, go get an appointment. Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Hannah Jo. And I hope you guys have a good day. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys.